You don't need a MacBook Mini or even one of those cloud services. And trust me, you definitely do not need one of those £20 a month OpenAI subscription services just to run some agents to run your data analysis. Because I built a Discord bot that will run all the analysis for me for free on this Raspberry Pi. It completely interacts with one of my Discord servers. So I just send it an @command and it loads the data set from the Pi, runs the analysis, generates the entirety of the charts, finds all the right plugins that I need to do, and sends it back to me completely finished. And the best part is the Pi just sits there and does all the number crunching like a little gremlin. And it runs in the background 24 hours a day, and it runs for pennies. So today I'm going to show you how you can build and connect a Clawdbot using OpenClaw and connect it to Qwen through your personal account and set it up so it's completely free, obviously except accounting for the price of this Pi. So you'll have an LLM agent that completely controls and can configure this entire device straight through a Discord server. People love the ideas of autonomous agents going around and fixing all your workflows, but they do not appreciate the idea of giving it user permissions for the entire device. So I thought it would be interesting to just give it this little case instead. Traditionally, they're buying Mac Minis, which can cost you around like 500 to 600 pounds. So instead, for 60 quid, you get a Raspberry Pi that can always be silent and has ultra low power modes, similar to a desktop computer, so it's really cheap to run. So to start off, I recommend just using a brand new version of the Raspberry Pi OS. So get your dongle out, load the new version of Raspberry Pi OS, and then in the settings, while you're loading this up, try and enable SSH, setting a username and password that you can easily remember. Because I don't know about you, I always forget my password. Once it's booted in and you can SSH onto it, we've got a couple commands that we need to run. First one that'll save you 20 minutes of headache is I recommend you doing a sudo app update and upgrade to ensure that you've got the latest version of everything. Next, if you can, open the browser and install Node and npm. So once you've got the latest version, you should be able to install OpenClaw relatively easily with this command. And using OpenClaw on board install Damien ensures that it doesn't just work in the terminal, but in real world settings as well. Next up, we're going to connect the brain, and the model that we're going to be using is through Qwen. Now, there's a couple different methods that you can store Qwen. The easiest that I found so far is using the OpenClaw portal authentication tool, because pasting API keys and random config files everywhere is going to cause you a headache. So once you've got it installed and everything's connected, you'll have a model running in real time. You can technically skip this step and your bot will still run, and you can do some cool stuff with the platform, but it's kind of like not having a brain, similar to me after I've started using AI with coding. Anyway, the next step is connecting a Discord bot that will be communicating to it. So open up the Discord developer portal, click new application and name it literally wherever you want, but go to bot and add bot here. And copy the bot token, but make sure you save it somewhere private or you'll be like me and you'll send it to Claude for review. Probably got like 50 API keys floating around on the internet. So whilst we're in the portal, you go on to bot, privilege, gateways, intent, and enable the message content intent. Try say that like 15 times in a row. And the server membership intent. Now, this is optional, but without the message content intent, your bot is basically useless, since it can technically run everything on here, but you can't see anything because it can't reply to you. And the final step is going to the OAuth 2 and generating a URL, but the bot permissions on your site need all of these specifications. So send message, read message, and I thought some interesting tools that you could use, like add attachments, embed links, manage messages, and be able to mention everybody in the platform. Just in case if you wanted other people to check in on your work. Copy the generated URL and open it up to it and invite it to the bot. So we're going to be moving onto the Pi, and we're going to export the bot token, and we're going to paste the token that we had previously. But this only makes it temporary, so to make it permanent, we're going to have to export it to the bash file. So now this should work even on reboots as well. To run our model on the Pi, all we have to write is OpenClaw space gateway. And what it's doing now is connecting OpenClaw to Discord, and using the Qwen LLM model, it can communicate the tools and responsibilities directly onto this Pi. And hopefully if you haven't saved anything dodgy on here, that's the pipeline. Now, to make this workflow usable, I noticed that SSHing onto the Pi or even using this really weird mini HDMI cable is frustrating. So we're gonna install something called WinSHP. And after connecting it to the Pi, when the Pi is on, you can directly just drag and drop files easily. Basically saved you a step there. There's like no monitors, none of that weird keyboard setup or whatever. So I thought, let's test this out with a data set, and the one that I picked is the entire Pokemon Pokédex, and we're going to be using correlation and outliers in this video. So we're going to tell it to try and find and locate the Pokemon CSV file that's randomly on this Pi, and analyze the correlation between height, weight, and the base stats for these Pokemon. And once it's aggregated everything, it's going to create a scatter plot with regression lines and send all the graphs back to our Discord channel. And it's interesting because the bot, within like 2 minutes, replied with the correlation matrix and the charts. Since it has controls over literally like all my files, it can find everything and install extra plugins that it needed, which is scary because it found and installed the right ones that I would use if I was doing this myself. And here's where you can talk back and forth with your little agent. So I saw the graph that it produced and I thought it was a little bit off. So I asked for it to look at some of the things that are swaying the data and try and manipulate and fix it. And then it identified that Eternamax, which is a Pokemon no one cares about, is 1,000 DMs, which is 100 meters tall. That's literally taller than the Burj Khalifa. Like, what happened to Pokemon's like Poliwhirl? And it pointed out that basically it destroyed the entire regression model because there's some extreme outliers. Plus, it also weighed like 15 billion metric tons. So it optionally chose to go in, remove some of these outliers, and rerun the new model. And it outputted the new correlation from weak to a strong correlation of heavier weight to height ratios, having a stronger base index. And that's the moment you realize that this isn't just me messing around with services, it's literally a statistical assistant, but running on Discord. So I thought, let's try and run a more complicated or more robust task for this thing to handle, but still sticking to that Pokemon theme. I dragged a more in-depth data set using the WinSHP called Pokemon Pre-Proc CSV. And then I hit the bot with a detailed brief instead. Gonna first try and find where the files are on this little Pi, inspect the columns, and do some new additional analysis on the types, attack speed, and special statistics. Then it's gonna group the Pokemon by category and calculate some of the average scores and ranking the types based on descending value. So we're gonna get the 5 strongest types. And from that, I wanted to generate some bullet points on its findings, like a true analyst. And the bot came back with a quite decent review. It found out, based on average stats, that Dragon, Steel, and Fighting types were the top 3 strongest on average. And on top of that, it gave bullet point insights, charts, and a clean explanation. But I think the important takeaway around this is that I didn't personally need to use pandas, I didn't have to open up any Excel files to check everything, and I didn't need to use my personal laptop for any analysis on these outputs. Now, obviously, Pokemon is a really fun example that we can take from here, but we can use this on workflows and insanely practical everyday tasks like quick EDAs on CSVs, generating charts and reports, and summarizing and outlining some of our detections. And because this is on a tiny Pi, it's always available, always online, and not competing with the more complicated main tasks that I have to worry about. I'm on my lunch break. It's like having a tiny data analyst intern in your house, but they're really cheap and don't take lunch breaks. I mean, there's probably stronger use cases where Mac Minis or home server for automation will be slightly better for this, but if you have specific jobs, listeners, tasks, or even just sending basic output to users, a Pi is a great budget solution. And if you like tinkering and doing little bits of research, this is phenomenal because it's Linux-based and the authentication and setup time is really small. So here we have the Clawdbot running completely on the Pi. We installed it effectively. We've got the Discord bot that can incentivize and correct some of our intents, and there's real analysis that can be done on this. In the next video, I feel like I'm going to level this up a bit more and see what kind of capabilities we can do with this new vibe coding and agent language models, but I really think this is a new way of doing Discord data analytics. You don't need a cloud server, it's really cheap, and it's All on a Raspberry Pi, what more do you need?